Hello. I'm glad you came back to hear my story. At this point, it seems like it would be a good idea for me to tell you the story of how I learned iron casting and a little bit of my history so far in my artistic career. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to the man who taught me iron casting and introduced me to this cast iron art community. Back in time, in August of 2009, I moved from my birth state of Massachusetts to study at the University of Georgia. Now, just for context, I was 22 years old at the time, and I had just completed my undergraduate degree at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. I had earned my Bachelor of Fine Art in Jewelry and Metalsmithing. So my background was in small metals. That art program, I did have a good foundation of other metalworking skills, like a little bit of machining, a little bit of forging, and a little bit of fabrication, welding, and some, like, I would say intermediate woodworking skills. Like, I took a couple furniture design classes with, joinery and things like, that. So I set out to obtain my Master of Fine Art in Jewelry and Metalwork at the University of Georgia. That very first semester, 2009, I was choosing my classes, and I signed up for a large-scale casting class that the sculpture department was offering. So the instructor of the class was Jim Bonacorsi, everybody calls him Jimbo. In a matter of months, he and his wife, LeeAnn Mitchell, who's a prolific independent artist in her own right, took me under their wings and became like family. To be honest, I think that they did that with a lot of their students, even having us over for holidays like Thanksgiving. Just for me, it really meant a lot. Moving the furthest I'd ever been away from my family, I didn't really have a support system. These are some personal pictures that I took probably in 2011 with a really, really low-end point-and-shoot camera. So these photos don't do any of his pieces justice, but just bear with me. At the time, I had no idea I would be making this presentation. So this is Jimbo's work. So his work is a reaction to society. Construction-wise, it's very industrial, but he hand fabricates everything and personally casts all of the cast iron components and doors, and he'll also utilize found object components, but the integration into the works as a whole of these objects from industry, it really is seamless. This is the front, and he cast all of those little text plates, and that is like one of his signature skulls. There's a chunk that's kind of been cut out and then sewn back in, and it says "not right." Then there's this drawer on the bottom. It says "empty daily." It's full of all the skulls. That's the ideas that get dropped in there, and then you empty it daily. This is the side view, so you can probably pick out some of the components that are ready-made components, propane tank and these fittings. And here is some smaller works that are wall pieces. Here I am posing with another one of his pieces, for scale. In his career, Jimbo has built quite a few furnaces of different size variations. This one, his furnace mother, has an 18-inch inner diameter. It will tap out about 350 pounds to 550 pounds, depending on what slagger you run it up to. There's a cast iron Gypsy next to it for scale. And then this is Mother's Little Helper, and it's a 14-inch inner diameter. This one is Rocket, a 10-inch, which was made from an old water heater. And then this little one is called Gene the Whip, and it's a 6-inch inner diameter. Obviously, we have a cast iron Gypsy in there for scale. This is Mother on Blast. And we used a bull ladle attached to this jib crane that had a really nice electronic chain hoist to help us with the, 550 pounds of molten cast iron. Just a quick aside, this guy is my friend Doug, and the pink hard hat that he's wearing is what inspired me to get a pink hard hat. The ironic part of the story is that I wanted the exact same, like, bubblegum pink that one is. And the one that I ordered when it showed up, it was like wicked hot pink. But there was an iron pour, so I needed it, and I just started using it, and the rest is history. Oh, this footage. We only caught kind of this in the middle. This is Jimbo using an oxygen lance to open up Mother's tap hole. We were running iron to the top slagger that day, so remember there's like 550 pounds of molten iron waiting on the other side of the furnace. If I remember correctly, it was the first tap of the pour, and I think that the bed coke wasn't preheated enough, but after Jimbo lanced it, everything was fine. So now you might be noticing some consistencies in his furnace design, notably the split wind box. And if you've seen some of my other videos, you might recognize that this is what I have tattooed on the side of my left leg. Here is a side-by-side for comparison. Okay, so this was the pour floor of my first iron pour in 2009. And this was the first time I wore a full suit of leathers. I'm not the only one who had a funny reaction to the experience. Here I am on the tower crew, charging the furnace, because that's where I started, and Jimbo is watching the tap spout for first iron. And LeeAnn was there too. She was the floor master for that pour. And this is our little group photo. I absolutely loved the experience and the process. I loved making molds and the community and the camaraderie that grew between folks that were pouring iron together. So the next pour that we had was bigger, and this was with Mother. And there I am up on the tower talking to Adam. So here are some of the iron art sculptures that I was making at the time. They were pretty dark. It was an interesting time for me as an artist. But I was also continuing to study welding and fabrication with Jimbo, so he let me say what I needed to say at the time, and for an artist, that's an invaluable opportunity. All the while, though, I was just having a great time casting and building just these really, really strong relationships. At this point in my casting career, two major things happened. The UGA Sculpture Department traveled to Sloss National Historic Landmark in Birmingham, Alabama, and attended the 2011 National Conference on Contemporary Cast Iron Art and Practices. The magnitude and history of this spot was so inspiring to me. I'd never been up close and personal with this side of the iron casting industry, and everything was just monstrous. Here I am for scale. I highly recommend visiting Sloss National Historic Landmark if you ever get a chance. Even if you're not an iron caster, it really is something to see. Many of us camping on site formed a community, and that really added to the experience because you were completely immersed in the people. Conference participants can bring their own furnaces, and I had never seen so many iron furnaces in one place, and of different styles too. So Jimbo and UGA, we packed up Mother's little helper. There's baby me on the back of the truck. So there's Mother's little helper and the tower and our ladles. And we poured at Sloss under the shed, and he was really happy at that conference. I mean, look at that smile. So then, here's the typical casting photos and then dropping bottom. This is the pile of castings that we poured. The whole experience of pouring was pretty standard to what I was used to at home in Georgia, but everything else about the conference, I was just exposed to so much. So this guy, I think he was from ECU, he's pouring a hand ladle of iron into a tiny mold and then using centrifugal force to help shoot the metal into the fine details of the mold. At that point, I hadn't seen a furnace this big before. I got to see people running furnaces in the rain and the challenges that that experience presents itself. I saw my first reaction molds being poured. Here are some chainsawed wood molds that were made by the artist Andrew Marsh. And that was the first time that I ever saw performance pours. This furnace ran with the tap spout open, and when there was enough molten iron in a little ladle arm, it would tip down and shoot sparks everywhere. And this was the first time I saw people pouring molten iron into ice. And I just thought, these people are crazy. And I think I'm one of them. The second thing that happened around that same time that really solidified my fate as a cast iron artist was I traveled on my own to the National Ornamental Metal Museum in Memphis, Tennessee, to help with an iron pour that they were having at their event Repair Days. And that was it. The mold had been cast. But I knew that I wanted to do this as often as possible, with as many different people as possible, everywhere that I could for the rest of my life. Things were changing at the school though. I mean, it was towards the end of my degree program. There seemed to be a lack of support from the university for the casting portion of the sculpture department, and also many of the staple iron casting community students had graduated or were about to graduate. So Jimbo hosted his last UGA invitational, and then after the last attendees left, we loaded up all the foundry equipment that he owned and he had built. So furnaces and ladles and charge tower stands, and we transported it to his and LeeAnn's property. As for most of us casters, location really isn't an issue. So he very successfully continued to have iron pours and providing cast iron to his students like me. And so here I am helping him run Mother's Little Helper after the move. As a mentor, Jimbo served as a member of my graduate committee and helped me achieve my master's degree. To thank him, I made this little tiny furnace in copper. Here's a shot of the initial fabrication, and now this is it finished and sandblasted, and then this is with the dark oxidation on it, and the tweer covers, they really came off. We named it Mother's Littlest Helper. But folks, that was the beginning of me making tiny tools. At the same time I was making this in the metal studio, I was fabricating my own 10-inch furnace from plans that Jimbo had helped me draw up. So here I am, standing on the wind box, and this furnace, my furnace's name is Baby. Another student built this 12-inch furnace here. Yeah, so it was the summer of 2012, and I packed up the Danger Ranger and this U-Haul trailer full of everything that I owned. Took my dog Bones. We moved from Athens, Georgia to the St. Louis area. I had been given a position as metal artist at the Craft Alliance Center for Art and Design. But again, I moved somewhere that I didn't know anybody. Jimbo said he would store my furnace for me because I was moving into the city at the time and I was kind of afraid that someone would steal it and scrap it. So that fall, in October, I met this guy named Rob. He had experience with a little bit of iron casting from a sculpture class that he had taken at St. Charles Community College. So he helped me that November and December. I decided I wanted to make a body of work that used a traditional jewelry format but included cast iron elements. And so he helped me, it was nights, late nights after work, helping me make these molds. When I graduated, Jimbo had always said if any of his students ever needed iron, that he would be available to help provide it for us. So 6 Mile Sculpture Works in Granite City, Illinois was generous enough to let me make my molds in their studio and pay them for the materials. And Rob and I packed all of them up and we drove to Georgia. Jimbo fired up Mother's Little Helper, and here it is, all the molds. Most of them are mine. And then when I was back in town, I was able to pick up my unlined furnace. These are some of the components that I cast while we were down there. I used a lot of them to make this series of necklaces. This was a pour I went down to Jimbo and LeeAnn's for, I think it was an Easter weekend. At the time, they were casting and selling metalsmithing raising stakes, and so we poured them in ductile iron. That's why the ladle is so bright. Here's what all was cast that day, and I ended up making this cast iron bow tie. These shots are from a more recent Thanksgiving iron pour. A lot of us UGA alum reunited for the event. Thank you, Jimbo, for giving me this iron casting education and connecting me with the family of iron casting artists that I know and love now. I'm glad to say I was able to leave the nest and participate in pours, create art, and bond with amazing folks, some of whom now are my absolute best friends. Many of you who are watching have left messages for me in the comments section advising me never to forget the people that helped me along the way get to where I'm at now. And if it were not for this man teaching me iron casting, I definitely wouldn't be the person that I am today. I'm thrilled to now be able to capture these experiences and make videos to show you and the whole world, our community, and what we're achieving. I want to give photo credit to Gabe Akagawa for this stoic portrait of Jimbo. Gabe is currently documenting all of us in the iron casting community with his Foundry Tree project. I recommend you check out the Foundry Tree website because it is a window into our bloodlines and our history. It is an iron casting artist database and maps out how the iron casting knowledge is being passed through our generations. It is also an amazing resource if you are interested in joining the cast iron art community yourself. His website, which I have linked to in the description box below this video, has a calendar that lists all of the iron casting events that are coming up and where they're located. It also lists iron casting groups by where they exist in the world, kind of by state or by country. So if you look on there right now, as of this recording, anything that's listed on that calendar might be postponed or it might be rescheduled for a later date. But if you're watching this after the pandemic has passed and it's now safe again to have group gatherings, you can probably figure out where the next iron pour will be that's close to where you're at. Thanks for listening to my backstory. If you liked this video and thought it was interesting, give it a like to help it get seen by more people. If you're interested in helping support the Cast Iron Gypsy channel, subscribing and hitting the bell will be a great help, and also you'll get notified every time I put out a new video. And thank you to my ironclad crew on Patreon. Their funds help produce these videos. And a big thanks to you if you've already subscribed. I may be preaching to the choir with that one, but it's been really encouraging to see all of you. As always, thanks for watching. I love you, and I'll see you at the next pour. It's raining. I'm sorry. Someone told me to get a better microphone, so I got a better microphone, and I don't know if it's gonna pick up the fact that it's pouring down cats and dogs right now. So that person, I'm trying. I'm really trying. My cell phone didn't have a camera at the time. So selfies weren't really a thing then. Alright, so I wonder if I can actually I have my computer down here, which probably isn't a good idea, but I needed to see the slideshow. There you go. Alright. So that's me on the bull ladle. The bull ladle has 2 driving ends, so it's kind of like a Ouija board.